Hello, HarvestLA. This is Joel. I will be doing the devotions for May 7th, and I will be reading from Deuteronomy 14, verse 22 to 29. This will be the NIV version. Okay, so here we go. Be sure to set aside a tenth of all your field's produce each year. Eat the tithe of your grain, new wine, and olive oil, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks in the presence of the Lord your God at the place he will choose as a dwelling for his name, so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God always. But if that place is too distant and you have been blessed by the Lord your God and cannot carry your tithe, then exchange your tithe for silver and take that silver with you and go to the place the Lord your God will choose. Use the silver to buy whatever you like, cattle, sheep, wine, or other fermented drink, or anything you wish. Then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice. And do not neglect the Levites living in your towns, for they have no allotment and inheritance of their own. At the end of every 3 years, bring all the tithe of that year's produce and store it in your towns, so that the Levites and the foreigners, the fatherless and the widows who live in your towns may come and eat and be satisfied, and so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. This is the word of God. So putting a little context to this passage was written in the later years of Moses' life. Moses had written this as a second law or a reiteration of what was written in Leviticus and Numbers. He writes it as a speech-like form to invite and encourage the new generation of Israelites before they enter into Canaan, the promised land, and to remind them of the importance of setting aside a tenth so that they may glorify the Lord with all the work that they have done. Remembering that all the work put into the soil or the raising of cattle are a blessing from God. And this blessing is to remind us that all is from him and to revere him as we enjoy what he has given us. And in addition, this passage wants to remind us to set aside that tithe for the Levites. The Levites were the priests and the pastors of the time. They were responsible for consecrating sacrifices for God, and also in charge of the ministry that God has in store for his people. So they were not responsible for working the soil or raising cattle, and therefore the Lord has reminded the Israelites to set aside in the consideration of the Levites. In addition to the Levites, the Lord also encouraged the Israelites to remember the foreigners, those who aren't in their circle. Remember the widows, remember the fatherless, remember those who need help. Remember those who may not be able to have cattle or land to work, and to bless them, because as they are blessed, our hearts open up to become bigger for his kingdom. One passage comes to mind from Romans 12, verse 1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. As I think about my life and how I have been blessed with the goodness of God and how I've been given much, I find myself much to be given to others. Our life is a living sacrifice for the Lord. if we see it from that perspective, we begin to embrace the heart of God. We begin to encounter His presence, and we begin to understand the purpose that He has for us as sons and daughters.